The story of Centralia begins like any other small American town. Nestled in the coal-rich hills of eastern Pennsylvania, it was a place built on fire long before that fire ever turned against it. Generations of miners lived and died by the black dust that coated everything. Their hands, their lungs, their houses, even the air they breathed. For over a century, the people of Centralia carved their lives out of the earth, their fortunes measured in coal seams and pay envelopes that never seemed to stretch far enough. It was a working man's town, a patchwork of narrow streets and row houses, of churches and corner stores where everyone knew everyone else's story. But beneath that quiet surface, something ancient and restless was waiting. By the early 1960s, the coal mines that had once made Centralia prosper were shutting down. The great veins of anthracite that powered America's factories and railroads were nearly exhausted, and the companies had moved on to easier, cheaper fuels. The town itself was shrinking, its population falling from more than 1,000 to just a few hundred. Still, those who remained held on with stubborn pride. They had survived mine collapses, strikes, and poverty. Centralia, to them, was home, solid, familiar, unchanging. Then came the fire. It started, like many tragedies, with something small, almost forgettable. In May of 1962, the town council decided to clean up the local landfill, a large open pit that had been dug into an old strip mine on the edge of town. The pit was full of trash, old tires, and debris. As they had done in other years, the volunteer fire department set the garbage on fire to burn it away. They believed it would smolder for a few hours and then be extinguished. But this year, something went wrong. Unseen beneath the surface, the flames found a passage into the abandoned coal tunnels that ran like veins under the ground. Those tunnels still held plenty of fuel, old seams of anthracite, dry timber supports, and pockets of oxygen left behind when the mining companies had sealed them off. Once the fire reached that buried labyrinth, it began to spread silently through the dark, feeding on coal that had lain untouched for decades. At first, no one realized what had happened. The landfill burned longer than expected, and when the smoke finally cleared, no one thought to check the mine shafts below. Weeks passed, then months, before people began to notice strange things. Wisps of smoke curling from cracks in the earth, the faint smell of sulfur in the morning air, a low rumble like distant thunder that seemed to come from deep below their feet. The ground grew warm, and patches of snow melted even in midwinter. By the time the authorities understood what was happening, it was too late. The fire had already traveled hundreds of feet underground, branching through miles of tunnels and creating a network of hidden infernos. The soil itself became unstable, softening as the heat rose. Carbon monoxide seeped through basements and cellars, invisible and deadly. For some, it began with headaches and dizziness. For others, it ended in tragedy. In 1979, a gas station owner inserted a stick into one of his underground fuel tanks to check the level. When he pulled it out, it was so hot he could barely touch it. The gasoline inside was nearly boiling. 3 years later, in 1981, a young boy named Todd Domboski was walking through his grandmother's yard when the ground suddenly opened beneath him. A sinkhole had formed out of nowhere, 20 feet deep and spewing toxic steam. The boy clung to a tree root, screaming as his cousin raced to pull him out. When rescuers tested the hole, they found lethal levels of carbon monoxide inside. Had Todd fallen just a few seconds longer, he would have suffocated before anyone could reach him. That incident became national news. Reporters and scientists descended on Centralia, turning the quiet coal town into a spectacle of disaster. The images were surreal. Streets cracked and steaming, smoke rising from manholes, dead trees standing like black skeletons against the fog. Beneath the surface, the fire burned hotter and deeper, reaching temperatures of over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. No one could say how far it had spread or how long it would burn. Some experts estimated it could last another 100 years, or even 500. For the people who still lived there, life became a strange kind of waiting. The government declared Centralia a danger zone and began buying out residents' homes. They offered relocation assistance, urging families to move to nearby towns. Some accepted, packing up generations of memories and leaving behind empty houses that would soon be bulldozed. But others refused. To them, Centralia was more than just a place. It was identity, history, and defiance. They saw the fire as just another hardship, not a death sentence. Fences went up around the worst areas. Roads buckled and split. In winter, steam rose from the cracks like breath from a sleeping giant. Visitors came to see it. The town on fire, they called it. Teenagers from nearby cities would drive in at night, daring each other to walk the abandoned streets where the yellow glow of burning coal lit the fog from below. Some spray-painted messages on the highway that now led to nowhere. "Welcome to hell," one read. "We're still here," said another. By the 1990s, the government had had enough. Most of Centralia's remaining buildings were condemned and demolished. The zip code was officially erased. Even the post office shut down. But a few residents still refused to leave. They fought in court for their right to stay, arguing that the danger was exaggerated, that the fire hadn't reached their homes yet. They won a temporary reprieve, but over the years, one by one, their numbers dwindled. What was once a thriving community became a ghost town. Nature began to reclaim the empty lots. Grass, wildflowers, and trees growing over the ruins of what had been. Only a handful of houses remained standing, isolated amid a landscape of smoke and silence. The church on the hill, St. Mary's, continued to hold services, its white steeple rising above a town that no longer existed. The cemetery behind it overlooked a valley of gray earth, where the ground still breathed heat like a living thing. Scientists studying the fire found that it had spread over several square miles and had burned through millions of tons of coal. They drilled holes and inserted temperature sensors, but no technology could stop it. Water only made it worse, creating steam that cracked the earth. Chemical barriers failed to contain it. The only option left was to wait, for the fire to burn itself out someday in a distant century. For many Americans, Centralia faded from memory. It became one of those strange footnotes in history, a curiosity whispered about but rarely seen. Yet for those who remember, it stands as a haunting reminder of how easily human carelessness can awaken forces beyond control. One careless fire turned an entire town into a wasteland, and no one, not scientists, not engineers, not politicians, could undo it. Today, Centralia is almost gone. The main highway that once ran through it, Route 61, was closed and rerouted after cracks and steam made it unsafe. The old road remains, covered in graffiti and silence, a place where color and decay coexist, where art meets abandonment. It's a kind of open-air memorial now, not just to the town that was lost, but to the people who refused to disappear with it. A few of them still live there, even today, aging survivors of a town swallowed by the earth. They tend to their small homes, surrounded by emptiness, and say they're not afraid. The fire, to them, is just part of the landscape, as constant as the wind. They've learned to live with it, as their ancestors once lived with danger underground. When asked why they stayed, one old resident answered simply, "Because this is home." From a distance, Centralia looks peaceful. Rolling hills, quiet roads, green trees. But beneath the soil, the fire still moves, unseen and unstoppable. A slow heartbeat of destruction that has lasted more than 60 years. It burns through the old veins of coal that once fed the nation, through the tunnels carved by men who never imagined their work would outlive them in such a way. It burns through the history of a town that refused to surrender. And maybe that's why Centralia endures, not as a place on a map, but as a story. The story of what happens when fire meets pride, when progress forgets to look down, when people choose to stand their ground even as it gives way beneath them. The story of a town that sold itself not for profit, but for survival, a deal written in smoke and silence. If you stand there today on the cracked pavement where the highway once ran, you'll see no buildings, no children, no stores, just the earth breathing through fissures, steam rising like ghosts from the past. The air smells faintly of sulfur and memory. It's hard to imagine that once this was a place of laughter and life, a place where miners came home at dusk, their faces black with coal dust, their hearts proud of what they had built. Centralia was not destroyed in an instant like Hiroshima, nor drowned overnight like Vanport. Its death was slower, quieter, stretched across generations, a reminder that not all catastrophes come with explosions. Some creep beneath your feet unnoticed, until one day you realize the ground you trusted has turned to ash. In the end, the fire won, But in another sense, it didn't. Because as long as people remember, as long as someone tells the story of Centralia, the town that burned, the town that refused to die, it will never truly be gone. Smoke still rises, the ground still breathes, and in that breath is a whisper from the past saying, "Be careful what you set in motion, for the earth never forgets."